This is the Reverend, and I'm drinking at Moe's.
All right, everybody. Want to thank Reaper Apparel for having Drinkin at Moe's be a brand ambassador. They encourage everybody to break out of that comfort zone, live their best self, which, hey, that's what got me starting the podcast. But they got great clothing, great apparel, t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, hats, all that good stuff. Be sure, link will be in the description, and use the code Drinkin at Moe's to get 10% off your order. Let's fucking go.
All right, everybody, welcome to Drinkin at Moe's. Big Mo here. We're on YouTube. Be sure to like, subscribe, all that good shit, because most people know that YouTube algorithm is a pain in the ass. Where most places you can find your podcast, leave a review, leave, all that good stuff, because it helps out there too. But today I have with me, I'm excited because I had Tank on a while back. Now I got the Reverend. How you doing?
Hey, doing well, Big Mo. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, like I said before we started recording, I'm doing pretty good. Got some good stuff coming up. And, like I mentioned, I seem to have developed a little bit of a following in the deathmatch community, which I am proud of. I've had, like I said, I've had Tank. I've had Bobby Beverly, the Bev. I've had him on. I've had, bucket list one for me, Alex Cologne. I had him on. So, I'm pretty excited.
That's sick, man. Congratulations. Yeah, that's a list of heavy hitters there for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you know what? I don't know why I forgot. I had the legend himself, Madman Pondo.
Hell yeah, I love Pondo. He is a hoot, man. That guy has some fucking stories.
Oh yeah, we went into a few of them. And
oh, I bet. I mean, he had enough to fill a book.
Oh
right?
Yeah, no, you know what? Here, eventually, I need to go get that book. But yeah, I remember he kind of tried to downplay the whole legend thing when I talked to him. But I'm like, dude, when people think of like deathmatch wrestling, current day, all the way back, and they think of a Mount Rushmore of deathmatch wrestling, and like, damn it, you're on there, man.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Pondo really kind of bridged the gap between like the Foley Funk era and the next era of deathmatch, and was really like the first guy in the States to do a whole shitload of a lot of that stuff. And he's still going strong. I gotta say, I got to take the infamous stop sign shot from Pondo up in Bristol, Tennessee, a couple of months, or it was it's a couple of months ago, back in February, and he cracked me good at Imperial Pro Wrestling. If you want to look that show up, it was Tank versus Toby Farley in a death match. And I was just trying to help out. I had my trusty skull and I'd thrown it to Tank. And I guess Pondo thought he wanted to even the odds there. So he cracked my fucking head with that stop sign.
He's got a lot of weapons in his arsenal that, I imagine would do some damage cracking somebody over the head with one of them.
Yeah, that he got the saw blade thing.
That thing, yeah. When I see him carrying that around, I'm like, holy shit.
Hell yeah. Yeah, Pondo's a great dude.
Oh yeah, no, I have nothing but love and respect for him. First thing I'd like to start off with each guest, especially the first timers. What got you started as a fan? And then what got you started, getting in there in the business? Because everybody's got their own story. Everybody's got their own origin story.
Oh man. Mine goes back a long way. I mean, Tanks goes back longer. um, um, so as a fan, I probably started watching. Like my earliest memory of seeing wrestling on the television would have been like WrestleMania, like the hype around WrestleMania 1. I remember seeing that on TV, like the rock and wrestling stuff when they're on SNL and Cindy Lauper stuff and all that. And then I remember seeing the Battle Royal from WrestleMania 2 on TV.
Yep. Got
and,
my dog trying to get into something right now. So, but yeah, no, continue.
Oh, no worries. As a dog owner myself, I understand. I actually have to let my cat out of my office right now. So,
you're good.
But so yeah, so that was like the first time I saw like wrestling on TV and was infatuated with it. But it went back even a little further than that because the legendary pioneer of hardcore wrestling himself, Gypsy Joe, was my great uncle. And so like he wasn't around a lot, but I would see him occasionally at family gatherings. And a lot of my family members all had like a story about Joe from the time that they let him meet Andre the Giant, or the time that they fucking got to go down to the Memorial Auditorium and all got front row seats, and he got beat up and bled all over the place, and they all freaked out because they thought he was really hurt and shit like that. But he was kind of like this legendary, like looming figure in my family. And when he showed up to these events, he was of course like the main attraction. Like all the kids wanted to gather around him and ask him questions and shit. So I wasn't like super close with him as a kid, but he was around. And so it kind of plays into how I got into the business, of course. So I was like a die-hard fan starting in like the late 80s. Like I started slow, like that first casual taste that I mentioned of watching it, plus the Legend of Joe, not really having much access to his footage. So it wasn't like today where you have the internet. Like I had to really, it's like a whole story in and of itself of me trying to hunt down just any footage of him that I could when I was first thinking about trying to break into the business. But I eventually got reconnected with him as a teenager and went up and spent some time with him in Nashville where he lived. And so this is before I ever got into business, but he took me on like a loop with him in Nashville through like Gallatin and Dixon. And it's like Jamie Dundee was on some of these shows, and like fucking one of them was a show that I know was ran by Tony Falk. So it was wild. I was just a fucking total mark at this point. And just, right to these indie shows with him. And like one of the Devil's Disciples, I think, was in the car, and like Hammer Jack and guys from that area that, like I said, they were active in the area for years before I even got into the business, because like that was, 2 or 3 years before I did. And I went and hung out with him. So anyway, after that week, I was like, okay, this is 100% some shit I want to do. So he told me, like, just find some shows out in Chattanooga. I'm like, I want to be a manager or an announcer. I didn't really want to be a wrestler. I'm not like a fucking physical specimen by imagination. So, but I was always like a great performer. I was an actor in high school and like fucking like won all kinds of awards and shit, just doing fucking high school drama and plays and shit, all because I wanted to be in wrestling. So I did that just because I wanted to be in fucking wrestling.
No, that definitely helps. A lot of the skills with the acting and playing to the crowd, and hell, you'll look at some of the people that have come from wrestling that have gone on to, hell, Hollywood careers. Look at, obviously The Rock. You got Batista. I mean, John Cena, even Stone Cold's even dabbled in it here and there. So, I mean, getting that background, it does help.
Oh yeah. So it was beneficial, and so like I went to a local kind of shindy in like the North Georgia area when I was in high school, like my senior year. So it would have been like 99, like spring of 99. We were getting ready to graduate. We were at this show, and we'd been backyard wrestling, of course, me and my buddies in high school, like all fucking marks of that. I was a teenager in the Attitude Era. I was 16 in 1996 when ECW was at its peak. And I was watching like 17, 18, watching the peak of the Monday Night Wars in my junior and senior year of high school. Wrestling was so huge in the country. On our fucking morning announcements at the high school, they would do a recap of Nitro and Raw.
That is awesome.
Like,
I was going to say, I don't think it was that huge here, but I know I was 96. I was 13. And man, middle school into high school, it was huge. I mean, we got into football in more so the first couple of years in high school for my football team were really, really big. We had some great teams, and I remember specifically that we would have a lot during the pep rallies, and even some during the pregame stuff, that they would use the old Scott Hall saying, "Survey says one more for the good."
Yeah, that it's hard to fucking like measure how over wrestling was at this time. So anyway, so me and my buddies go to the shindy. Like their ring announcer is kind of crummy, and one of my buddies, who's just kind of an abrasive asshole, jumps up and says, "Oh, that was terrible. My buddy can do it better than you." So puts me right on the fucking spot. The guy, of course, being pissed off because he's not going to let this fucking mark upstage him, comes over to me and says, "Okay, do it." And he hands me an ad to read, and I fucking just drilled it. Of course, like I got a standing ovation from the audience, and they hired me to get that guy's job, which was like fucking $5 a week. So it wasn't like a major stipend or anything. But it was my first like gig into wrestling, and I did like some color commentary and some managing on that show. Ended up going to a bit better show down the road. Like that's the thing when you first get started, you get your foot in the door wherever you can get it. And you just keep on moving forward. So I found a bit better show up the road in Dalton, Georgia. That's where I met Adam Jacobs and Air Paris, who got me my tryout at NWA Wildside. And that's really when my career kind of really like started, like in terms of like having any sort of real like success doing shows where anybody covered them or saw them.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That show in Dalton is also where I met Tank. And he might have told the story on the show about how we met, how like where my uncle had beaten him up with a baseball bat.
It sounds familiar, but when I get this all edited together, I'll definitely have his episode in the description so people can kind of go back and forth however they want.
Okay. Well, Too Long Didn't Read version is Gypsy Joe in a work that Tank thought was a shoot, hit him with a baseball bat in a match, and it cracked his skull open, and Tank had a grudge over that for years until he finally kind of figured out what was going on. But like he and so I thought he was gonna find me and like confront me about it. because Tank ended up like taking some time off for this place, but he was like even then a much skinnier Tank. Even he was like a feared badass in the areas. Like the locker room already would like tell stories about him and shit. And so when he finally showed up there, I was like, "Oh boy, this guy is he's not we might have then we got to talking, and of course we were like into all the same music and horror movies and other shit, and so we kind of became like the best of friends. And even like I got him his tryout at Wildside. I got him there.
Nice.
And then I started managing him in 2005.
I was trying to remember when that all started.
Yeah. So I was like I got hired to NWA Wildside. I was the ring announcer at first. I got promoted to play-by-play TV commentary with Stephen Prazak from ECW, and he was fucking awesome. Learned a whole shitload from him. He also worked at like Global Wrestling and North Georgia Wrestling Alliance. He did a lot of fairly prominent shit. And he was just great. He was such a great partner, like because I was a green idiot who had no idea what I was doing, but I had a natural like talent as a performer, and he just kind of guided me through it.
Oh yeah, no, I remember I was just wanting to surprise a couple of my friends at a show. This promotion, it no longer running, but at the time they did like 2-night shows every weekend, Saturday and I believe Saturday and Sunday. Might be wrong, but regardless, they ran up in North Dakota. So I went and I had become friends with the promoters. So I was like, hey, just seeing if maybe I could get in early, just surprise the friends like, hey, I was able to make the 8-hour or so drive up to Fargo. Hey, I'm here. But then I'm like, I told them, I don't care if I can get used in the show. I just want to surprise my friends. And then, whatever from there. Then they're like, what would you say to being special guest ring announcers for their match? And I'm like, you're telling me I get to be in the ring with a microphone? Yes, please. Although, goddamn, I was so fucking nervous before I got announced. Like, I'm literally behind the curtain pacing back and forth. I remember, like, loudly saying, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, some guy that was already back there came over and was like, you all right? And I'm like, yeah, a little nervous. But man, getting that little itch, and then now everything with a podcast and getting to talk with a bunch of the great people that I've been able to talk to, it's been fun. And I mentioned that I had Tank on, and brought up when you just mentioned getting started with him in 2005. The thing with Tank a lot of the times is a lot of his matches are death matches, and managers, it's already kind of a lost art in pro wrestling when it comes to managers, but even more so when it comes to managers and death matches. What's it kind of like, being out there with him and being in the midst of some of that craziness?
I love it. It is wild, and there's a very real danger. You got shards of glass flying at your face and shit. Luckily, I'm mostly covered out there, so I can take calculated risks when I do get involved. It's weird in death matches because, like, okay, I'm glad you brought this up, because this is something that I feel like needs to be kind of explained as far as me and Tank. Like, Tank is like an innovator in the deathmatch world, and we love death matches. We love doing those shows. They're fun as fuck. The crowd is awesome. The community is awesome. It's a giant party. It's just pure, like, it appeals to that like lizard brain. It's like that pure, raw, unadulterated violence. But it's very different than the traditional pro wrestling that we came up in. And so But we did come up in that kind of blood and guts Southern brawling type wrestling that there's not really a place for that on the grand scale anymore. So the deathmatch world has kind of adopted people like us as like lost orphans,
Mm.
I mean, it's kind of how John Wayne Murdoch even got into death matches. He did not start out doing them. I remember working on shows with Murdoch when in fucking Nashville, when he wrestled under the name Damian Payne for NWA Main Event and Mike Porter. And we were all just doing fucking Southern wrestling. Jerry Jarrett was out in the crowd watching. We felt like $1 million, But it was, the wrestling world changes and it evolves. And you gotta fucking evolve with it. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to change with the times. I think that's underrated. A lot of guys don't do it and they end up kind of getting left by the wayside, but you have to. And accepting deathmatch as something that people want and is here to stay is part of that. So I really love that community and thank them for embracing us. But it is a different philosophy managing in a death match versus managing in a match where you're a heel trying to get heat and break the rules. That was how the Rev kind of started, of course, as this gimmick in the Bible Belt. They wanted to fucking kill me for years, but you do something well enough for long enough, they start to like you. And so now I have toddlers fucking cheering for the guy with the satanic goat skull, and wrestling is amazing like that because in no other world would those people ever accept someone like me. But because they buy into our gimmick and they buy into what we do, they love me, and it's weird. So as a babyface manager is even harder than a heel manager because you're kind of useless as tits on a boar hog. And then you go to the deathmatch world where there's no rules. So there's no rules to break to get heat. There's no, really you can serve as a distraction at times, but you can be a mouthpiece. So you've really got to bring a lot of value to the role. And so I'm very proud of my acceptance into the deathmatch world because managers don't get booked hardly in death matches because why? Why do you need them? And so the people that think that I'm needed, means that I'm doing something that's helping Tank's package sell tickets.
No, definitely. And a lot of good points you brought up, needing to evolve. A lot of the guys out there that have had, and some that are still going, that have had that longevity have all been guys that have evolved in different ways. You could go back to the Undertaker and all the changes that he had. You can go as recently as Chris Jericho with all the different monikers he's gone under, and that evolving helps keep you in there longer. And it's something special. And with the deathmatch community, I've been thankful to have somewhat developed the following there that I have. I mean, I started out as just a fan like everybody else. I mean, I still consider myself just like everybody else, but now I've talked to, like we've mentioned, talked to Alex Colon, talked to Bev, talked to Tank, talked to Madman Pondo. I've talked, and I've had a couple in the last couple of weeks that I've talked to that's just this is awesome. And recently, another guy in the deathmatch community that I'm a fan of, who actually runs a deathmatch promotion, a no-ring deathmatch promotion, Mid-Death Pro, mostly out of Iowa, the Carver. His promotion did a show here in Omaha and didn't realize when I got my ticket that it included entry into this raffle for a signed item that was used in one of the matches that, signed by everybody. and didn't realize that I won until he walks over and hands me the section of a door that was broken in a match. Literally signed by everybody. There's a dent that looked like somebody's head had, bounced off of it. There's a blood stain on there that, I kid you not, my wife, when she first saw it, she's like, is that really blood on there? I'm like, yeah.
The deathmatch world, the only form of entertainment where you can take the DNA of the people you paid to see home with you.
That is true, man. And, talk about stuff flying around. I remember one of the times a light tube was used, and man, that connecting end, one of the connecting ends flew off and hit me in the foot. I was like, dude, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's a dangerous environment. You got to know what you're getting into. It's not for the faint of heart, but the people that love it are rabid for it.
Yeah, and you being a manager in the deathmatch community, one of the only other people that I can vaguely remember that really has ever at any point used a manager in that community, and you don't really see him use this guy too often anymore. Nick Gage, with the guy that he would come out with, I'm like,
Dewey Donovan.
Dewey Donovan, yeah.
Yeah, he was the guy. I mean, he was around at the same time I was in a different area, right? So in the early Wild Side days when we were popping off in Georgia, like he was managing the Hate Club at CZW in Philly, which is where they were based at the time. They ran all over the Northeast. But yeah, and like I wasn't even a manager then. So Jeff G. Bailey would have been like, him and Dewey would have been the two, like, probably top managers of their couple of years of a hot run there, like 0102.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's been around for a long fucking time. And I do see that GCW still brings him out. So that's cool.
Yeah. That's I think where I really started noticing him, because I probably remember him from back in the day, looking stuff up on YouTube. But then when I started getting introduced to GCW and seeing Nick Gage coming out there with him, like, still to this day, if I have a bucket list item when it comes to wrestling, like, I have a whole wrestling related bucket list, but one thing is to be live in the crowd for there we go. Some alert came on the phone. Anyways, but Nick Gage, yes, being there live for one of a show that he's on, whether that be GCW, wherever it might end up being, because every GCW show that I've seen with him on it, it's like those first couple of notes hit of that song, and then it's like that whole crowd just turns into a giant fucking mosh pit.
Yeah, it's a super rabid environment. That's the energy that you want, that creates those moments that people go home and talk about. I think I only worked with Gage once. It was at one of the Scenic City Invitational tournaments where I wasn't even managing anybody at the time. I just did commentary on that show, and he worked in a high school gym where he could not cuss or bleed, and still won over the crowd and was entertaining as fuck. So, what a pro.
Yep. And, one thing I was wanting to bring up that I remember seeing on social media relatively recently was, you not only now have Tank, but you seem to have developed a little bit of a stable here with, I've also had this guy on, CJ Lawler. I've had him on. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pronouncing the guy's name, Nathan Mowery.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
The human grindhouse film himself, the Killbilly Nathan Mowery.
Yeah, and man, let me just say that, especially coming from just the picture that I saw of all of you together, is like, okay, that's one intimidating looking group.
I appreciate that. Well, we kind of me and Tank, when I started managing him, it was a stable. And so it's kind of a callback to those days when we were called the Devil's Rejects. It was Tank and Iceberg and a dude named Azrael from the South, not the one from the Northeast, but Slim J's training partners. Fucking dude's incredible. He just never left the South, so he's not as much known outside of that area. But we started this stable in 2005, and I was the lead babyface announcer at NWA Wildside down there in Georgia, and I turned heel to start that stable and started, like it was like the Dan the Dragon Wilson lost his mind, and so he became crazy and grew his hair out and became this psychotic, like cult leading reverend figure. And our goal was to destroy the promotion. So and we did this War Games match in 2006 that is still talked about today. It was recently in a Ringer article on ringer.com. It was named the #1 independent War Games match of all time. It was talked about in a book called Way of the Blade, 100 of the best bloody matches of all time. Hey. And so that became kind of our formula. Like we would go into a place as heels, we would beat the shit out of the baby faces, we would work a feud, we would build up to the War Games, we would finally put the baby faces over, we would leave, go somewhere else. That was kind of and then we did that several different places. And so the stable was kind of what we became known for. But over time, one by one, guys started kind of dropping off. We had Sean Tempers, who was just fucking amazing. We ended up leaving the group. Of course, we would stay some places so long we would do angles where we'd have to split up and feud with each other as well. So that happened places too. We beat the shit out of each other in these bloody, blow off matches to splitting up the group. So over time, like I said, that thing kind of fizzled out. Now Iceberg is retired. He sadly had to have his leg amputated, but he has got a new prosthetic. He's up moving around. All those fundraising efforts were very helpful. We ran a big benefit show for him in Georgia, and all the boys showed up, all the talent. I say boys and girls. When I say boys, I mean that gender inclusive. That includes everybody.
Yeah, no, anymore these days, yeah, you can say the boys, but it's one of those things people calling their friends dude, just saying dude, it could mean anybody.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sorry, I got off track. Anyway, so the Azrael retired. He is doing some training down there. But Tank was the only one that's still active. Hell, even me and Tank retired in 2017. We
I remember, talk about that more later.
But so when we came back, we've had this run, and it's been great with just me and him. But our shtick, for lack of a better word, works better as a group.
Yeah.
And so in this particular go around, we've kind of taken a different dynamic with it, though. So because these guys are both up and comers in CJ and Nathan, they're not yet established, but they are trying to be. And I've always had a hell of an eye for talent. Even as much as I'm the most proud of the Reverend and that character that I've created over time in wrestling, the most thing I will be known for, or the thing I will be most known for, is coming up with AJ Styles' phenomenal one nickname back in NWA Wildside. I worked on the creative team of Wildside. I've always been able to spot guys who had something that you just had to kind of develop and bring out of. And I believe CJ and Nathan have something. They have that innate charisma that sells tickets. And so, we're fine tuning the in-ring on a regular basis because they are trying to be established. But yeah, I love it. I feel kind of whole now that I have this group, as opposed to just Tank. Having just Tank is great, but it's like also when you run into like feuds with guys where there's like 4 fucking heels on the other side and they beat the shit out of you, then you look like an asshole. You don't have anybody to help you, so you need somebody to help you. So that's why we got him, and gives me somebody else to manage. I got a tag team I can manage now as well. You can book us as a tag team, or 3 of us, or what the fuck ever, you know.
Yeah, no, that's the definitely has its benefits. One thing I was curious, if you could we'll fantasy book here for a little bit. If you could add anybody to the group, if anybody, who would it be?
Oh man, right now I don't think I would add anybody, but I am kind of eyeballing a couple of people actually, to see if they might want to join in the future. So I don't really want to say their names because it's like kind of a shoot question. Like people in the deathmatch world that would fit. Like there's probably a lot. Like people have always wanted to see us do something kind of with Cruel. Like it's I don't know if I think he's got his own thing. I don't think he really needs me, but I've seen a lot of people ask for that. But so like I think he would kind of fit,
I can see it.
In an obtuse way. Like I think, but he would. It would be a battle for dominance between him and Tank at that point. But I think, there would be it's a thought. It's something that's certainly been pitched by promoters at times. I'll say that.
I can understand that.
Casanova Valentine kind of has the same like look and like attitude that our guys have, so he would be a good fit. It's something I could also see where like we could take it places, and even if just maybe there's a guy that's just there that fits the bill, then maybe could be the associate in that chapter or something. There's a lot of options for us to do this. There's a ton of great talent out there on the indies right now. The people that say the indies are dead or there's a lack of talent, you're just not fucking looking. Because you're not watching the shows doesn't mean they're not out there.
Oh yeah, no, there's good Lord, there is so many options out there and so much great talent out there. It's like if you're out there saying stuff like the indies are dead or the talent, whatever, you're not looking.
But, I mean, even like the deathmatch world alone has so much wrestling talent. Like guys who can actually work. Like John Wayne Murdoch, as mentioned earlier, he can work. Tank can work. Yeah. Tank is a wrestler first, who is also a deathmatch guy. Like he can do it all. And fucking Reed Bentley's a great worker, and like Eric Ryan is a great worker, and the Bev is a great worker, and these are guys. And Cruel does his gimmick as a great worker. Like these for the standards of traditional pro wrestling, not just death matches. And there's a lot of guys in deathmatch that fit that bill. There's also a lot of guys that don't. But I'm not here to run nobody down. No, that ain't my vibe, man.
No, that ain't my vibe either. I try to keep it lighthearted and fun. So no, definitely not about running anybody down. But you mentioned a little bit ago about a little bit of a break you and Tank took. It was 2017, 18 in there. Yep. What led up to taking that break, and then what got you guys thinking? What we want to get back in there.
So, in short, we weren't really having much fun anymore. The longer story of that, guys, I'm sure Tank told his part of it, but my part of it was a little different because I had taken a booking job that damn near killed me in 2016 in Georgia. Like, I mentioned Wildside and the building there in Georgia and Cornelia, and like that's the place that launched me. But I also feel like my loyalty there almost was too much at times, because times when I should have like gone other places, I kept getting and tried to go other. I kept getting pulled back. 2016, like a new guy had bought it who was a friend of mine, and he had ran it into pretty bad financial straits, and asked me to come in to book to try to help kind of turn things around. And I did, but it was a very stressful proposition. Uh, and like, just I had to work with the dude I fucking hated, and like that shit that sucked. But
No.
I through it. We turned business around. He sold the company to another guy who came in and like revamped everything, and we were rocking and rolling. We had great production. My goal was to get the TV back there because I saw the new world of streaming. Jerry from IWTV had already been in touch with me about bringing like a Wildside like product back to TV with them. And like nobody else there just saw the big picture, unfortunately. So like I was headbutting with the promoter on the big picture of like, okay, like, yeah, you might only be getting pennies on the dollar on the stream, but it's being seen all over the place. Like he was dead set on like, well, we should charge a set pay-per-view fee, and like he didn't get the streaming thing.
Yeah.
Which was, it's probably like in the greater world, still the jury, I guess, is out on if that's a profitable model or not. But for indie wrestling at the time, it was a way of the future, and he damn sure didn't make any more money doing it the other way. So what I'm saying is I was right.
No, I totally get it, because I mean, hell, even today there's places where like I've gotten tickets to shows, and there's been some places that literally part of their opening spiel is telling people to take pictures, record, maybe not record the whole damn show, but to just enjoy it. But just, if you're gonna record like clips here and there, tag the promotion. And then a lot of people would think, what, people would see the clips, they'd be like, man, that looked pretty cool, I want to see the entire show, or I want to go see the show. So it's like more eyes on the product. But then I've had other places that I've gone to that it's like all of a sudden, after getting the ticket, you're getting an email that is talking about different rules for the show, and saying that they aren't allowing video recording of any kind. And it's like, on one hand, okay, whatever, but when you try to talk about it like it's hurting your product, when I guess in my eyes it was always the streaming plus people recording little clips here and there, it's only bringing more eyes to the product.
It's like a byproduct of the world. Like everybody has a fucking camera in their pocket, so they're gonna film shit. Like, and you cannot police that. Unfortunately, you can police them from stealing your shit and like putting your whole show online. Sure,
Yeah,
at least, but like I think it's silly to try to police gifts and stuff like that. But yeah, so like that was kind of the type of thing that me and the owner of the promotion were headbutting on. And then also, like, part of my agreement when I agreed to stay on as booker, when my initial like 6-month agreement with that dude was up, was that I would have total creative control, because I don't like booking when the promoter wants to butt their head in. Like, it's their money, I get it, but if I'm not losing you money, then don't interfere in my creative process.
No.
So we butted heads on that as well. And then like, so when and part of it also was I was still trying to kind of only do wrestling part-time then and enjoy still some of the years with my daughter while she was still kind of young. And so some shows I would take a lot of vacations, some shows I would work remote, and some shows I would say, okay, I'm sending you the finishes and the times and the format, and that's what we're doing, and you can deliver them. That's easy. But of course, anytime I wasn't there, the finishes and shit would get changed. It was just typical indie wrestling stuff. It was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I got kind of fed up with that and said, you know what, I'm gonna peace out for a while. And I just like took a break from wrestling entirely. I said I was retiring then because I thought, God, I've been at this so fucking long. Doesn't really seem like anybody gives a fuck. Like after all the work I put in. So like, you know what? It's been great, but I'm just like, I'm gonna leave this to the fucking young guys and kind of go try some other shit. And so I did. Like I went and studied like filmmaking a little bit, like on my own, and try to make a couple shitty little horror movie shorts, and started a horror movie podcast, which is still going, and has a decent little following called Seeking Human Victims. If you want to look us up on Spotify or iTunes,
Definitely.
and I had fun doing that, but the pandemic hit. I got bored, and during that time, there's a lot of self-reflection. And like wrestling is just my one true love as far as fucking what I do as a performer. And I don't really feel whole without it in my life somehow.
No.
So I slowly but surely, like a crack addict, get pulled back in with just one hit. I was like, oh, I'll just feel. I want to feel a little warmth of nostalgia. I'll watch some old WCW from when I was a kid. And of course, that turned into watching more and more, and that turned into what's this AEW, and like starting to keep up with the modern wrestling and shit. And of course, about the same time, Tank calls me up, and it's like, man, I'm getting fucking bored. Like I was like, what are you thinking about coming back? And I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. He's like, all right, well, let's get the band back together and do Tank and the Rev one more time. I was like, fuck yeah. So we got booked at Mania weekend originally for the Tony Deppen Beer House show in Tampa from the IWTV block of stuff they were doing. And Tank fought Manders on that show, and they had a hell of a match. And then Jeff King did not show up for ICW the next night, or the later that night. And Danny D'Amato made a beeline straight to Tank, asked him if he wanted to work. And we were on ICW that night. And so after that, and the response we got that even then, and people continue to still let us know that, hey, actually a few people did remember us and kind of give a shit. And, that means a lot. And so we kind of got the bug again and been back at it since April of 2021. So we now just rounded 2 full years back in it, and probably more popular than we've ever been with our old asses, which is so weird.
Oh man, I know I get a kick out of any time I see y'all on my screen. And one thing you brought up that I like to talk with each of my guests something outside of wrestling, and you brought up your horror movie podcast. Well, talk about that a little bit so like people can go ahead and get their eyes on that too.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, it's called Seeking Human Victims. It was started in 2018. I co-host it with my wife of a long time now, going on 14 years, Annie, and my best friend from childhood, Muji, who was me and him were all into wrestling and shit together as kids. So it's kind of a full circle thing. And then another dude who I was friends with in high school, who fucking played guitar in the bands I was in and shit. His name's Grizz is his nickname. And we do a round table format. We watch a movie, and I do extensive research on the background of it and the people involved. And I just kind of present a little bit of history about it, and we comment on it, and then we kind of give a round table discussion about just opinions that are kind of reserved for the end. But it's it's a little bit of comedy, it's a little bit serious, but it's a lot of fun. If you want to see the Rev in a little bit more laid back environment, and I'm still on a little bit, so it's Dan is there a lot, but it's the Rev is still in there a little bit.
Yeah,
that show. Seeking Human Victims, again, is the title. You can subscribe. You follow us on Twitter at OG Scare. We just posted a new episode. We're in between seasons right now. We've done 16 seasons of the show so far. We have
Nice.
Patreon. That is patreon.com/OG Scare. You can unlock the full archive for $1 on the Patreon if you want to go over there and check that out. All 16 seasons. We're in between seasons right now. We did just drop a bonus episode this week. We're covering the movie Bubba Hotep, directed by Don Coscarelli, starring the great Bruce Campbell as Elvis and the legendary actor Ozzie Davis as a deranged mental patient who thinks he's JFK, and they team up to fight a mummy in a nursing home, and it's fucking amazing. If you haven't seen
Interesting.
check it out.
I'm definitely gonna have to check that one out. One thing that I'm not so much into horror myself, although I will admit the more slasher side of the horror genre has kind of grown on me a little bit. I will say the stuff that deals with like the demonic side of stuff, definitely still that stuff still scares the shit out of me. Like I remember one time I was like, you know what? I want to pick a time that, there's still going to be people there, but, it ain't going to be a huge crowd. But I kid you not, the one time I decided to go, I ended up being the only damn one in the damn theater. And I ended up standing like partially by the entrance, like kind of peeking through, like,
That's great.
But the slasher stuff, like some of the Halloween movies, I can kind of get into. And hell, my wife is part of paid management staff at this haunted house here in Omaha that I've periodically gone and got done up and did a character here and there. And I will say this: I enjoy doing the scaring way more than I like it getting done to me. But yeah, it was one of those things for me. But we'll definitely have all the information for your podcast in the description. And to kind of round off the show, I got two categories. First one's a bit of a name game where you and Tank have either had a match with said person or at least shared the card with one of the guys, and you give me first thought that pops into your head about them.
Okay.
First one, a guy that I talked about, Alex Colon being a bucket list item interview for me. This guy's another one. He's one of like the current crop of, like, you think a current deathmatch Mount Rushmore, this guy is definitely on it. Matt Tremont.
The bulldozer.
The bulldozer, yeah.
Legend. Love Matt Tremont, man. Very thankful for him. Like he is, I think he's kind of partially, I don't like to say responsible, but like he just talked us up a lot. Matt grew up watching Wild Side. It was syndicated on TV up there on WGTW in Philadelphia. And it was a big influence on him as a kid. And so he vouches for us all the time, and it means a lot. He's one of the best to ever fucking do it. He's a great, another one, when I say great workers, irrespective of death matches, he's a great worker. Like you can put him in any environment and he'll succeed.
Oh, most totally. I mean, he's had some great matches with heck, one non-death match of his that immediately pops to mind when I think of Matt Tremont in a non-death match that was just absolutely amazing. Him and Billy Starks. That match right there was fucking amazing.
Yeah, it was outstanding. Billy's, of course, incredible.
Oh,
I wrestled her as well back on.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I do remember that one. Yeah, and I got to have her on too, and it was just like, wow, like the sky isn't even the limit for her.
Yeah, she's a great kid. It's great to spend quite a bit of time around her in the SCI and Uncharted Territory shows. Like
Yeah.
the SCI, I've been in and out of involvement with since it started. I was actually on the team of people that created that show, and then it, I was a commentator on the first several and helped them book it, and then I kind of stepped away. And but I've been back since I've been back. They've been booking us. We'll be back again there in July for them for the SCI. And that's where I kind of met and got to know Billy. But fantastic talent, and of course, yeah, I mean, she's going to be like a generational talent.
Oh, most definitely. Next one, another person I've had on that I can't believe I didn't mention this person when I talked about deathmatch community that I'd had on, and his episode is actually, last I checked, the second most watched episode that I've had on YouTube. Insane Lane.
Insane Lane. I know he's taking some time away from the business. Hope he's doing well. I hope he's taking care of himself. But he was a great guy to have around on these shows over the years. Like I first met him at IWA Deep South like years ago when it was still good. Okay, before you put your pitchforks down. When like Mike Burns was booking it, and they were booking a bunch of good talent, and Kevin was still Kevin, like, but he paid well. But at some point, the money is not worth putting up with his behavior, because at some point people start making you think that you condone that kind of behavior, and that's why Tank and I have never taken any bookings for him on this return tour, unfortunately. But that was fuck.
No, that I get you there.
That was the first time I met Lane, and then formed a friendship with him and knew him over the years for a long time, and had seen him around recently. Like I said, I know he's taking a little bit of a break. I do hope to see him back.
Oh yeah, no, me right there with you. This next guy, he, another former guest. I think, like, I've talked a whole bout about former guests, but he just this last year won the most recent CZW Tournament of Death. Bobby Beverly, the Bev.
The Bev and the Rev. We're pals. Like I like the Bev, and I think as a worker, he's just fucking fantastic. I think he's one of the best all around workers in deathmatch. He and Tank had a hell of a fight at ICW Chattanooga in November. If you want to go look that up on IWTV.
I definitely will.
In the chains. Yeah, a lot of respect for that dude. Always a pleasure seeing him in the locker room, and always great if you get to tangle with him in the ring.
Oh yeah, nope. I definitely loved having him on, and you not every day you get to talk with somebody. I mean, it's one thing to talk with somebody that's been in deathmatch tournaments, but to talk with somebody that has literally won. When people think of deathmatch tournaments and like the modern day deathmatch tournaments, you obviously you got Nick Gage Invitational, the Tournament of Survival, but then there's also right up there with those the CZW Tournament of Death, and the fact that he won the whole damn thing was just awesome.
Yeah, well deserved for sure.
Definitely. No, last but not least, for the name game category here, a guy that I've heard that he can be one way backstage, more so if he likes you, but when he gets out, that music hits and he's out there in front of the crowd, it's almost like boom, he turns into a different mode. The man, Schlack.
Schlack is unique, man. He's a real attraction. There's not many people in wrestling that look like him, you know. I think like just on look alone, he sells tickets because how the fuck would you not want to pay to see a guy that looked like that maniac?
Yep.
And you know, he really does kind of embody that old school like Bruiser Brody-esque style. I never had to fucking fight him, thankfully, so I don't know what it's like to be in the ring with him. Tank has been in the ring with him, and you know, he didn't seem to have a problem, but you know, Tank don't people don't really take liberties with Tank, if you didn't guess. So
Oh yeah, no,
I can't really comment on that.
no. Tank is definitely one of those guys that, you know, after talking with him and after watching the many matches that I've seen of his, he definitely gives off that vibe that it's like, you better hope you don't take liberties with him because you're not gonna like it if you do.
No, like a lot of people don't know, you
Oh,
know, he came up, he's an old school shooter, like not like a like fucking MMA shooter. I mean, like the old timers like taught him the old tricks of how to pop an eyeball out of a socket and how to break the small bones in your hand with one quick snap, and those things that will cripple you very quickly, that they don't teach in wrestling school anymore because he came from a different era. And yeah, don't try him. I promise you it's not gonna work well for you unless you're like unless you're like, you know, Ken Shamrock, or you know, like you're like a real shoot badass maybe, but
yeah,
no,
definitely one of those wish you good luck on that. But last but not least, I got a random question category. Some might be wrestling related, some might not be. But you give me first answer that pops into your head when you hear the question.
Okay.
First one, and especially with the deathmatch community, I've heard some doozies. Craziest in-match moment that you've witnessed.
Terry Knight getting set on fire. It wasn't even in a death match. This was a regular, it was kind of a death match. It was NWA Wildside Freedom Fight 2001. And it was a flaming tables match. And they used the wrong kind of flame igniter. So instead of using lighter fluid, which is what you traditionally use to pull that gag off, I call it a gag, like motherfuckers don't get maimed doing lighter fluid. Like that's underselling it. So I'll reel that back in. But he used rubbing alcohol instead. And so fucking flames are like to the ceiling. He takes like a pit bull style super bomb off the top through the flaming table and just goes up like a goddamn Christmas tree.
Oh, jeez.
And jumps up and fucking takes off while in flames through the arena. And like everyone's like chasing him, trying to put him out. And the fucking the Cole brothers, who you might remember from WCW, they were these like identical twin tag team of like lower card guys. But when they got fired from WCW, they got juiced to the fucking gills. So they were like these giant ripped to shreds monsters. And they fucking came out and like shoulder tackled Terry to the floor to put him out. And then our security guy came with a fucking fire extinguisher and just fucking let him have it. And the whole building fills with smoke. And he got burnt up pretty bad on his back. But he was back in a couple of months. It didn't like disfigure him or nothing. But it was fucking insane in the moment. That's the first one that comes to mind. But there's probably been a dozen or more. But I thought somebody else or myself was not gonna make it out of there.
No, that would be hard to beat that one. I know one of the crazier ones that I witnessed was actually just last year, was at a show for Sammy Callahan's promotion, Wrestling Revolver, and It was Jake Chris versus Joel Bateman in a death match. And they had just gotten done with the multi-person Monsters Ball match right before. So there was already all sorts of shit all throughout the ring, thumbtacks, all that shit. And they were getting ready to clean it up, but then here runs in Jake, grabs the microphone, is like, fuck that, leave it, let's go. And then they get going. It ends by them taking 4 folding chairs and bridging 2 panes of glass on it. And then here I see Jake's guy, Bobby, rolling in, and I see him pull out lighter fluid. They light the panes of glass on fire, then they do a move off the top rope and glass everywhere. And one of the most insane things I've ever seen.
That's wild. Yeah, I like those guys, Jake and Bobby. Bobby also a manager out here trying to get some love. Give that guy some love for out here.
I actually
got him a top guy.
Oh no, I actually just had him on. His episode released Mania week. I had Jake on shortly after the video of him burning that title for the promotion that we won't talk about. I literally was like, I kind of jokingly talked about this, but it's kind of really how it happened. I kind of pulled how Paul Heyman got Stone Cold to come to ECW, where I'm like, you got a grievance, I got a show, let's air it. And then boom, he came on, and definitely one of my favorite episodes. And currently, out of the podcast audio versions of the show, that one's one of my most listened to ones.
Hell yeah.
So I'm excited about that. Anyways, this show, for this category, I would feel weird with the name of the show that I have if I didn't have this question in here. Drinking at Moe's, so I gotta have favorite drink, whether alcoholic or not, or one of each if you want.
Sure. Shit. For alcoholic, whiskey of some kind, like Crown and Coke is always a popular mixture. Jack and Coke. That's Maker's Mark's not bad either. I'm not like a brand loyalist for whiskey or a snob, but it's my preferred drink. I also like a darker, like heavier beer is my there. And for like just regular drinks like cherry Coke, specifically cherry Coke Zero, which is because I'm trying to be on a fucking diet.
Same with me with Dr. Pepper. I like the regular, but my wife's doctor was like, oh, we might see if we can get him to switch to at least diet. So it's like, now I drink the diet stuff, but my wife tries to tell me that I got a Dr. Pepper problem. I love telling this joke. I always tell her that I don't have a problem. I have it figured out. The only time I have a problem is when I don't have any.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's I've been trying to wean myself off of sodas a little bit, but I still give it to myself as a treat. I've been trying to drop a little weight, like not getting any younger, and I'm more active out here these days at ringside, running around, and I got these young guys that I manage and I got to keep up with. So anytime you do like tag team stuff, the manager's always like fucking more involved. So I'm trying to get back into some shape.
And you bring up whiskey and cherry Coke. I didn't even ever before my honeymoon actually think of this concoction, and I know there's a specific name of it, but it's basically Jack or whiskey, Coke, and grenadine. And I tell you, you get it mixed together right, and it basically tastes like a Jack and Cherry Coke.
Yeah, that would be right up my alley.
So, like, if I'm getting a mixed drink pretty much anywhere, that is what I'm getting. 9 times out of 10. But
Hell yeah.
we talked a lot about, your horror movie podcast, being a part of, being a horror movie fan. One thing that I remember thinking when I first started seeing the Reverend out there is like, I remember thinking, man, he looks like he's straight out of a fucking horror movie. And I mean, probably credit that because I mean, the character just screams horror movie. What would you say is like a favorite horror movie villain or horror movie icon, if you will?
Oh man, there's so many. Like that's when I definitely can't just pick one, but I'll
Okay,
list
well, yeah, name a couple.
um so just like my favorite horror movies are really John Carpenter movies initially. Like I'm a huge mark for him. And then the early Wes Craven, like I love the fucking Hills Have Eyes, Last House on the Left. Um, I love the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I'd say like, the Leatherface family, like not just Leatherface, but the whole family, like the cook and the hitchhiker and all of that. That's a great ensemble. Michael Myers is a fantastic horror villain. Um, I took a lot of inspiration from the way Otis Driftwood was played in House of a Thousand Corpses for the Rev initially, combined with a little King Diamond, a little Gene Simmons, a little Kevin Sullivan. Like there's a bunch of different influences that kind of made the Rev, but that was certainly one of them. And there's other horror, like the Crypt Keeper is a huge influence on the Rev, and Beetlejuice is a huge influence
I can
on
see
the
that.
Rev.
I can see little bits there.
Little pieces of things that I love, and I kind of use them to craft this whole different thing.
That's awesome. And you mentioned a lot of those guys, and I'm like, you know what? Each of them that you mentioned, I'm like, okay, I can. The wheels in my head spinning. I'm like, okay, I can see how he got to that. That's awesome. Like I said, maybe not so much of a big horror movie fan, but you get into the kind of slasher subgenre, I guess, where you got like the Michael Myers. I do enjoy some of the Halloween movies, and I don't know why. I just all of a sudden one day I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna try it. I'm like I heard a lot of people talking about these ones. I'm just gonna sit down one day. I don't have anything going on. I'm gonna watch. And you know what? Those ones for some reason just stuck with me. I'm like, okay, I can watch this.
Hell yeah. No, slasher is definitely one of my favorite subgenres of horror. There was hugely prevalent when I was a kid in the 80s. You had Freddy Krueger, you had fucking Jason, like that was all the rage as a child of the 80s. So
Yeah.
definitely
Born in 83, so
oh nice. So not far behind.
Not far behind at all. But last but not least for this category, best advice for anybody wanting to get into wrestling.
Like, okay, can I ask a clarifying question?
Okay.
Like, best advice on how to get into wrestling, or like best advice for your life if you do get into wrestling?
You know what? Most of the time when I ask this question, the answers I tend to get are towards the that can also be mixed into life. So we'll go that way.
Okay. So know that all of this is temporary. It all goes away. All of your friendships, not all of them, but a lot of them, and it's just not even anything malicious, right? It's just the nature of it. You meet people, you bond with them, you work together for a few months, couple years, whatever. Then life changes, circumstances change, they're off to different places. Like the constant thing about wrestling is people are always on the move and trying to get better and better seen and go different places and do different things. So like everything is temporary. You are living in the prime of your life if you get to do this. You are living a childhood dream in most cases. if you get to do this. So enjoy every moment of it, even the frustrations. Don't be afraid to step away for a bit when it's like affecting your mental health negatively, because it's not worth it to that degree. But also, like, if you're talented, there's always going to be a spot for you in wrestling. So enjoy the ride, enjoy the people, because they're not permanent either, and not by choice a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, as evidenced by some of the people we've lost this year.
Oh yeah. And I mean, it's just, unfortunately, it's a sad reality of getting used to being in the business. You lose a lot of friends over the years. If you've done this a long time like me, you've lost a lot of fucking people. And it's something that you don't want to get numb to. You kind of do in a way, and it sucks. But so like, yeah, like, appreciate the people while they're around you. Take all those fucking pictures and shit. I know that's all like cheesy cliche shit, but it's true. Like, and I think it, like, people stop paying attention to advice like that because they hear it so much. But like, man, you get to a certain point in your life, you do realize that that's the kind of shit that matters.
And you know, sometimes eventually all you're really left with when it comes to some of those people are the pictures and the memories. And you know, hell, I've been kind of open and honest about some of the struggles. I hate to use that word, but I've been open and honest about it. And I had a friend that I happened to meet going back to school after I got out of the Navy. And you know, we hit it up. We took I think the vast majority of our classes just happened to be together. I don't know how the hell it worked out, but it did. And you know, after we got out of school, you know, we would talk all the time. And you know, like a lot of friends, you know, sometimes you go a couple months, and then it just happened that all of a sudden it was getting close to a year and I hadn't heard from this person. So I'm like, what the hell is going on? And like, I was trying everywhere. I was looking at obituaries. I was finding nothing. And, you know, my now wife could tell that it was bothering me. So she tried to help. And she found with the person's name on a grave at the National Cemetery on the Find a Grave thing. And then she brought it to me, and it was like, I looked at it. I looked at the date of birth and the date of his passing. I'm like, heart sunk. I knew that second that it was him. And then I went looking around because I'm like, man, I got to find a picture with it. I had none. Did not realize that entire time we knew each other that we didn't get one. So it's like we said, sometimes in the end, that's all you're left with, pictures and memories of those people. So take advantage of it while you got it.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd also say, like, don't like stress yourself out on an obsessive level of comparing your journey to other people's, because everyone's path is different. Sometimes you might not be in demand to be booked at the place everybody wants to be. So you know what you got to do then? You got to make where you're at the fucking place to be. Don't worry about other people's journeys so much. Worry about your own, and whether or not it's fulfilling to you. That's the advice that I would give.
Oh yeah. And you know, before we go, kind of building off of what you said there about if you're not currently in demand of where everybody's wanting to go, making the place where you want to, that you're at the place where people want to go, and then kind of borrowing from something that Cody Rhodes once said back in the early days of AEW, taking yourself and going from undesirable to undeniable. But that is about all I have. I want to, before we go, where can people find you social media wise and all that? So if they don't already have their eyes on you, have their eyes on the have their eyes on Tank or CG Lawler and your group, where can they find you so they can get their eyes there?
Yeah, so we just started a TikTok for the stable. The new stable is called Coven of the Goat, and it's sort of the legacy of the old Devil's Rejects, but with a new generation, a new spin, and more importantly, a name we own. But, so you should follow Coven of the Goat on TikTok at Coven of the Goat. That's brand new. Our introductory short film is there where you can go check that out. You can also follow me on Twitter at Rev Dan Wilson. That is the social media I am most active on. I am also on Instagram. You can follow me there at Rev Dan Wilson, and you can also find me on Facebook at Rev Dan the Dragon Wilson. You just type that in, and I'll pop up the page there. My personal page is also there, which has basically become a fucking wrestling page at this point. If you find me there, I'll probably add you, but it will take a long fucking time, possibly, because that's either you get accepted immediately or I forget, and then I have 500 to go through, and I don't ever make it through them in one sitting. So my personal Facebook's a crapshoot, but you go to the professional page and hit me up. You better more likely to get my attention there, or actually Twitter, the best place to get my attention at Rev Dan Wilson. You can follow Tank on Twitter at Tank_1996. You can follow CJ Lawler on Twitter at CJ Lawler. You can follow Nathan Mowery on Twitter at Nathan Mowery if you want to keep up with all the happenings of the Coven of the Goat. And if you want to follow my little production company, One Good Scare Productions, that produces my podcast, Seeking Human Victims, you want the updates on that, that's at OG Scare on Twitter.
Definitely. We'll get all of that in the description. Anyways, like I said, that is about all I have. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and best of luck with the Coven of the Goat out there.
Thank you for having me, Big Mo, and keep them horns high.